What's going on, everybody? Happy holidays and welcome back to the Points Per podcast. Thank you for joining us as always. My name's Eric. That's my co host, Will. And today we're going to be mock drafting once again for the 2026 Dynasty rookie class. The last time that we did this was a little bit over a month ago, if I remember correctly. And a lot has changed since then. We've gotten some more news and some more kind of speculation about players that may or may not be declaring for the draft. We've had some risers and some fallers over the last month. And we did just wrap up the end of the college football regular season. So we're on to bowl schedule, championship games, college football playoffs, stuff of that nature. So there's a lot more information coming down the road, but I think we also have a lot of information to work with here to kind of reevaluate and take another look at this mock draft. So I'm excited to get into it. But before we do, Will, how you doing this evening?
Hey man, I'm feeling great. I'm actually really excited to talk about some of these prospects. Like you said, some things have changed since the last time we talked about them on the channel, so definitely ready to get some updates in.
Absolutely. So I guess before we officially kick things off, just some notes to let you guys know in terms of like format and the lens that we're looking at this through. This is going to be a 2-round mock draft for a 12-team league. We're going to be using Superflex settings, assuming half PPR, half point tight end premium as well, and then just assuming like starting 3 wide receivers in your lineups. So if you have any questions about players being valued a certain way, you can use that as kind of a guide, but also hit us up in the comments if you have questions and we can try to answer anything you have. But I think with that, I'm ready to get into it. We can pull up the tier maker on the screen as our source for what we're going to be doing the mock draft on. Will, you want to do the honors with the first overall pick?
Absolutely. We're not going to get too cute with this one. We're going with Jeremiyah Love. He's been the 101 so far this year for the rookie drafts, and he's going to stay the 101 so far. He's just an elite talent, and he's considered, in a tier of his own amongst all the other running backs in this class. He's the most well-rounded running back in terms of being able to catch passes, break tackles, make things happen in the open field, get between the tackles, just make things happen with his vision as well. And he's just had strong production over the last couple of years at Notre Dame just to kind of bolster all of that. So in terms of just someone who can make a difference no matter on the landing spot, I'm pretty confident he's one of these guys. He's not someone we have as highly prospected as like a Bijan Robinson or a Saquon Barkley, one of the generational guys, but he is someone that is going to make an impact at the pro level for sure.
Yeah, I don't think he's super far off of those guys necessarily. I agree with you, but I was just listening to an athletic podcast with Dane Brugler after he just did his first, big mock draft of the season. He had Jeremiyah Love early in the first round, I think in the top 15, and called him the most explosive player in the entire draft class, and said that he's actually giving Jeremiyah Love a grade higher than he gave to Ashton Genty last year. So he is well worth this 101 pick, and I have absolutely no questions that he's going to go there once we get to draft season.
I absolutely love that. Where are we going with our next pick?
I think you're gonna like this one, or you might be upset that I'm taking him from you.
Let's do it.
I've flip flopped a little bit. I'm gonna go with Carnell Tate as
Come
my
on.
102. Yeah,
Come on.
you've convinced me. I still love Makai Lemon. Anybody that's been watching the channel the past month, 2 months, you know that I am a huge Makai Lemon fan and still am. But Carnell Tate is just so impressive this year, leading the country in yards per route run at over 3.5, doing it alongside Jeremiah Smith, maybe the best player in all of college football right now, and the guy that we're hyping up so incredibly highly for the 2027 class. So the fact that he's able to do that alongside such tough competition and for the best team in the country against the level of competition that he's facing is really impressive. I think he's also just incredibly safe in terms of his innate ability. Like, I'm not worried about landing spot with him necessarily as much as I am with some of the other top wide receiver prospects, where I think they could be impacted more by team situation and coaching staff. I think Carnell Tate is just such a well-rounded prospect and so pro-ready that regardless of where he goes, he's going to succeed. And so I just feel like this is almost bust-proof type player here at the 102 with Carnell Tate.
I absolutely agree. If I was in the 102 spot, I would have made this exact same pick. I think in terms of ceilings for wide receivers in this class, it doesn't get any higher than it does with Carnell Tate right here. I think that, he's not the biggest, he's not the fastest, he's not the strongest in this class. But when it comes to just understanding of the game, route running, being in the right spaces, and just overall efficiency, There's just nobody else in this class that really does it like him.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So let's go to the 103. Who are you going to have next?
All right, so with the 103, we're gonna go one of the other wide receivers. I'm going with Jordyn Tyson right here out of
Okay.
Arizona State. I know between Makai Lemon, I know that Eric here, he would favor Makai Lemon in this spot. So I think that right here, you could go with one or the other, and it's not really too much of a huge difference there. I think there's both great prospects, but with Jordyn Tyson, I just think he brings more of that X possibility to a game, more of that just huge playmaking ability at the short, intermediate, and deep level. He has great route running. He's still a little bit raw, but I feel like if things were tightened up at the next level, he could be one of those guys that could make a huge difference too. And with just production this season, it's been phenomenal out there, honestly, at Arizona State. So I would kind of expect him to be a top 10 pick, or especially a day one pick for sure. And with
Yeah.
a great landing spot, he could just take off.
Yeah, 100%. And I want to make it clear, I also really like Jordyn Tyson. I have him in that top tier of wide receivers as well. And we've had this discussion a few times over the past couple of videos, but just to play devil's advocate just a little bit, the reason that I have him as my third out of this top three receivers is just that I feel like his 2024 tape was phenomenal. And he's kind of maybe not regressed, but taken a slight step back, or at least not taken that jump forward that you want to see kind of in that progression for these guys' college careers. I'm a little bit concerned just about the way that they've used him, at least this year. Again, 2024 was a different story. He looked incredibly impressive. But so far this year, I feel like just the way that he's being used and kind of the ways that he's winning aren't necessarily the most translatable to the NFL. It's a lot of just kind of get him in space and let him work. He's not necessarily dominating from a route running or separation perspective. He is incredibly athletic, but like he's not putting up crazy yak numbers. He's actually kind of middle of the pack in terms of the rest of the wide receiver class in this group. So I'm really nitpicking. I'm just kind of giving you reasons why you could go one way or the other. But I really like Jordyn Tyson. I think he's got an incredibly high upside. So I don't mind him at the 103 one bit.
Absolutely. And where are we looking for the 104? I think we got an idea.
Yeah, I think everybody knows. It's my boy Makai Lemon. I will say, obviously I've put him at my wide receiver 2 now. Carnell Tate is the wide receiver 1, so I'm ever so slightly less bullish than I have been so far to this point in draft season. The production has been phenomenal. He's looking great on a USC team that's been really competitive. I think that he kind of fits the mold of what we see from some of the top fantasy producing wide receivers in the modern NFL right now. The likes of Amon-Ra St. Brown, Puka Nacua, guys that are not the biggest. I mean, Puka's a pretty big guy, but like Amon-Ra St. Brown is a little on the shorter side, but he's stocky, he's strong, he's a good blocker. That's why they can use him so creatively in that kind of slot F role, where he can be used to fit into the run game, but then also out of that have these crazy condensed splits and be released through the line of scrimmage to have these crazy openings that a lot of other receivers don't get the opportunity to do. And I think Makai Lemon is somebody that could potentially go on to see that type of usage. One of the things that I alluded to with Carnell Tate being so landing spot proof, where I feel like Makai Lemon isn't necessarily that. I think he needs to go to a team that's going to use him in a creative fashion like that to kind of reach his fantasy ceiling. And otherwise, we might not see quite that level of production. So that's the only reason that I would be concerned. But he's still very much, I would be running to make this pick at the 104.
Yeah, I think it stands to just be extremely impressive that once again, like he's second in yards per route run, like 3.1 something. So he's like right
Mm-hmm.
behind Carnell Tate, even though there is a bit of a gap. He's still right behind him in terms of ranking. And the fact that he's doing that and being the target hog that he also has been this season as well, I think that does just go to stand that at least in the role that he is in, he is extremely effective. But like you said, I think that would kind of need to match up at the next level too.
Yeah,
A little bit.
for sure. Okay, so that'll do it for the early firsts, the 101 through the 104. Let's move on to the next section here in the mid first. Will, who are you going to start us out with?
All right, guys. So we got to remember this is a super flex draft, and we do have some quarterbacks in this draft that are coming up. So I'm going with the one who is probably for sure going to leave college this year with Fernando Mendoza. So when it comes to him, he's a weird conversation right now. The whole dialogue with him on the internet, since he's in the Heisman race, but he doesn't have a whole lot of yards, but he is kind of clearing things in terms of not turning the ball over, being efficient with the ball. He's a big body guy as well. He's actually a lot bigger than I thought he was. He's 6'5", 225, and he's got 6 rushing touchdowns on the season. So he is one of those guys that, like a Josh Allen, where he could be used in the goal line type situation because he's just a big body. But when it comes to him as a quarterback prospect, I think that in today's NFL, with the skill that we have at the wide receiver position, you don't really have to be a game changer at the quarterback position to be someone who's valuable at the quarterback position. Just be someone who's good with the football, who can distribute the football, and who is safe with the football. And that's what Fernando Mendoza has proven so far this year at Indiana. And they've been phenomenal. I think he does have good weapons out there. So this is sort of a, I guess, example of what he could be at the next level, where maybe he's not someone who's breaking the doors down, but he is someone who's sort of a high level game manager who is sort of in that same bracket as like a Jared Goff.
Yeah, I agree with that comparison. I would have gone the same way. I'm really excited for this Big Ten title game this weekend, Indiana versus Ohio State. I think that's going to be great tape to watch for this upcoming draft. And I think potentially maybe decide which quarterback we're going to see go first in rookie drafts. Obviously, there's a lot more to take into consideration than just one game. But Fernando Mendoza, I think, is a great pick. I think when I was deciding between him and the guy that I'm going to take next, Dante Moore, who we'll discuss a little bit later. Quarterback evaluation is so tough. And I think there's a lot of similarities between these two guys in terms of their play style. And like you mentioned, like the game management type of style, they're safe with the football, but they're very accurate and consistent. I just leaned on the guy that has more starts, that has more experience. Yeah. Fernando Mendoza has so much experience coming from Cal and now into Indiana, playing at the highest level. And so, yeah, I think that he's a very safe pick. And I think you made it a very apt comparison with like the Jared Goffs, the Kirk Cousins, maybe the CJ Strouds. That's kind of the mold that we're looking at with this quarterback class, or at least the top 3 guys.
Absolutely.
But as I alluded to with the 106, I will select Dante Moore. Just to kind of give you guys some background, we actually haven't really been including him in the 2026 class through the last, I don't know, month-ish, based on his own reports. He had talked about wanting to return to school, not declaring for this draft class, but there's been some news as of late that he might have changed his mind. We've also seen his offensive coordinator at Oregon accept the head coaching job at Kentucky, and so that could also play into his decision to want to come back. It seems like Oregon is going to be in the college football playoff, and so maybe their performance in that will play a part in what he wants to do. But for the purpose of this mock draft, we are going to have him in here. And I already kind of described him in the same way that I did Mendoza. They're just really consistent, great at delivering the football on time and on schedule, allowing their wide receivers, their weapons to produce. And so I think that they're going to be good for fantasy for whoever's playing on the team, the wide receivers and the skill position players as well. I just don't know that the upside or the ceiling of these quarterbacks is as high as some previous draft classes, just because they don't provide much in terms of rushing.
Yeah, I think especially when looking at like a Dante Moore, he provides a little bit more mobility than like a Fernando Mendoza, but not like he's not a mobile quarterback. Neither of these guys are. Yeah. But when it comes to being safe with the ball and just kind of going out there and making the plays, I think both of these guys have the ability to do so. But like you said with Dante Moore, he's a little bit scarier because he's only got like a season and a half of experience. So you would like to see a little bit more on tape before you can say that that's a sure thing. But like you said, it stands to be seen what he's actually going to do this season. But I think if he were to declare right now, there are NFL teams who are going to look at him, who are going to take a chance on him. Oh, yeah. Especially as young as he is as well. He's only 20 years old. So it's like you got this guy who you could turn into your franchise guy for sure. And who at least at a young age is showing signs of being safe with the football.
Yeah, 100%. I expect both of these guys to get top 5 draft capital. It's interesting, like looking at Tankathon in terms of like where the teams rank right now in terms of draft order. The top 2-3 teams, whatever it is, aren't necessarily quarterback needy. And so I do expect there to be a lot of action in terms of trading up and trying to get to these guys. But whether or not, they're taken first or second overall, although I do think that that's, probably pretty likely, they're going to be high-end draft capital players. So I don't think you have to worry about that one bit.
Absolutely.
All right. So you're going to be back up at the 107.
At the 107, I'm actually looking at Casey Concepcion. I
Okay.
feel like he's somebody who's kinda stepped it up as of late. We talked about him recently where the season's been a little bit weird for him, but I think as of late, things have been getting better for KC. But just as a prospect himself, one, he was a very hype prospect as a freshman, and things have been a little bit up and down since. But I feel like as a prospect himself, he's somebody who can make a difference at the NFL level in terms of being an athlete. He's one of the most explosive ones in this class in terms of quickness, change of direction, speed, versatility in the receiving game as well. Being one of those guys, you could put him out on screens, you could use him as a deep threat. He's someone who can create separation and can beat people at the next level too. And make plays downfield, like 15.5 yards per reception as well. So he's really good at tracking the ball too. So he's someone who, as of late, I've been seeing him get mocked a lot in the first round. And if that were the case and he were to get that good draft capital and end up in a good situation, he's someone I could see making that difference at the next level.
Yeah, I agree with you. This is slightly higher than I had him, but he's a guy that's been rising up my board as well. You mentioned that freshman year that was really productive at NC State. I thought he looked incredibly dynamic. He was used more around the line of scrimmage and kind of gadgety type usage, but was really productive still. And I think it's been really good to see this year at Texas A&M him be used more down the field, and we can see that he's capable of doing more than just kind of that screens and around the line of scrimmage stuff. He can do real big boy wide receiver things, and so that's been impressive to see, and certainly worth drafting him. Kind of around this range, and in terms of the NFL as well, I think he's probably going to be in that borderline round one, round two conversation.
Absolutely.
All right, so to round out our mid first section with the 108, I'm probably going to go back to the quarterback. I'm less confident about this one, but just kind of following some of my own advice from some of the videos that Vishy and I have done recently. Some of these not necessarily perceived elite quarterback talents, a lot of times we let them slip too far in our Superflex drafts, regardless of whether we necessarily believe that they're going to be elite NFL talents. I think that they can ascend to a certain level of dynasty value, and then from there, you can decide what to do with them, whether you want to hang on to them or whether you want to trade them. But with Ty Simpson specifically, this is a guy that is a little bit of a risk. This is his first season starting at Alabama. He looked fantastic through the first half of the season. Over the past kind of 3 weeks or so, he hasn't looked bad, but it's been a slight decline from kind of the trajectory that he was on so far this season. Fits into a similar mold as the first two guys, where he's just a pocket passer, doesn't provide a ton in terms of the run game, but he's on time, on schedule, relatively accurate and consistent. Just not quite in that kind of upper echelon in this draft class with those top two names. But based on kind of the rest of the group here, there is a little bit of a fall off for me. And so with that being said, I'm willing to kind of take that chance on another quarterback that could provide me high dynasty value moving forward.
I'd agree with that. I like this spot for Ty Simpson. I probably had him a little bit lower. I do want to ask what your opinion on something is because, with the athleticism is there. Would you refer to Ty Simpson as a dual threat quarterback?
I don't know that I'd go that far. I mean, you don't have his rushing production in front of you, do you? Like I feel like he's
I've got it pulled up. So
yeah.
I got it pulled up. So this year, right? He's got
Mm-hmm.
75 carries for 126 yards.
So that's also college production where they do
They
negative
factor
yards for
in,
sacks, right?
right?
Yeah. So it's always going to look kind of funky compared to NFL statistics. I wouldn't call him a dual threat. I think he's a somewhat capable rusher. He can use his legs to pick up a first down or, take advantage of space, but he's not like going to threaten a defense with his legs. I don't think.
Yeah.
Do
I
you?
think I like to look at him as somebody who's capable of running. I've seen people
Yeah.
call him that, like just I guess to try to differentiate him from the rest of the quarterbacks. I think it's a little bit of a stretch. I
Yeah.
think he is someone who will attempt to run if he needs
Sure.
to, like you said, but I don't think
Yeah.
he's someone that's run first at all.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so that'll do it for the mid firsts. We move into the 109 spot. Who do you want to take here?
For the 109 spot, I'm actually looking back at the running backs again. Someone who I think he was just shut down for the rest of the season, actually. But I'm looking at Justice Haynes because I still like him as a prospect, no matter he was shut down for the season or not. Honestly, that's just less reps. That's cool for me. But when it comes to the running backs, he's for sure the number 2 running back in this class, and he's just a home run hitter for sure. He just burst off 50-plus yard runs every other game. He's just been a home run hitter so far this entire season. Now, people look at Alabama, they're wondering why stuff wasn't really what it should have been or what it is this year. But at the same time, this is just a year where he's getting more opportunity. And I'm just taking it as he's got the opportunity. He's an older prospect who just took his opportunity and ran with it, just for lack of better words, to be honest with you. But before the injury, he's racked up 857 yards, 10 touchdowns, over 7 yards per carry. And when he was healthy, he was the centerpiece of this Michigan offense through and through. So looking towards at the NFL level, I think he's someone that, again, he could make a difference at the NFL level as a rusher. And I don't think he'd be a complete zero in the passing game, too. I think that is something that could get worked in.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. This is something that we've talked about in previous videos as well, where that's kind of a hole in his statistical profile. He just doesn't really have that passing game work to this point in his career. But I do think that that's something that he can develop. It's just not necessarily something that teams have asked him to do or put him in a position to do. So it's definitely possible that he could develop there. I also have him as my RB2. I've been kind of flip flopping between him and another player. But when you get down below like the elite tier of running backs, you really just want the guys that have that explosive ability and big play ability that are going to give you those splash weeks. And I think Justice Haynes is kind of the perfect prototype for that type of running back.
Absolutely.
All right. So at the 110, I'm going to bring in our first tight end, man. We are in half point tight end premium, and I think it's Kenyon Sadiq time. He's been really, really impressive this last month or so. We were high on him before, and like I said, we did this mock draft a little over a month ago, and I think we had him borderline first or second round. He's going to be moving up in a lot of people's eyes. He's been statistically fantastic, production wise. He's been putting up big numbers, and I just think on film, not that I didn't see it before, but he's really dominant in terms of his athletic ability, whether it be versus corners, linebackers, safeties. I feel like he's really a matchup nightmare. He's ever so slightly undersized, like just barely. I think he's like, 6'3", 6'4", 235. If he put on another like 5 to 10 pounds, I would feel great about him being able to be an inline player, be on the field all the time as a blocker, and also like an elite receiving option for a team. I think he's kind of on the fringe of that, to where you hope he can be better than the team slot receiver for him to stay on the field at all times. But either way, I think he's going to be incredibly efficient when he is on the field, and he's proven that to this point in the season. But I'm curious your thoughts on him.
No, I've been falling in love with Kenyon Sadiq over the last couple of weeks, especially seeing some of these mock drafts as well. One, he's getting a lot of love in these mock drafts. I've seen a lot of first round, even like top 10 mocks with Kenyon Sadiq going in the top 10.
Yeah.
And with that being said, it's like you said, when watching his film, and I don't want to get ahead of myself, and I don't really think this is getting too ahead of myself, but it's like looking at a more athletic Harold Fannin out there, the way he kind of plays. And even like the way they kind of line him up around the field, they'll put him in the slot sometimes. They'll even line him up out wide. And there are times that we've seen in the NFL, like even just this past week with Brock Bowers, they put him everywhere on the field because, again, there's nobody else there really. But it just goes to show that in today's NFL, if you are one of those guys who proves that you're a pass catcher early on, you will get that burn early on, just like Harold Fannin did with the Cleveland Browns. He's sitting there getting playing time alongside David Njoku week 1. So if you're in there and you're able to make that kind of a difference super early, which I think he can, because in terms of him being a pass catcher, he's obviously the best tight end in this class at doing any of that. But even at just blocking, I don't think he's a complete zero as a blocker either. I think he's a pretty decent blocker too. So in terms of him being out on the field a lot, he's somebody I could see breaking onto a field pretty early on.
Yeah, 100%. Dane Brugler, like I mentioned, came out with that mock draft, had him going to Kansas City in the first round.
Oh my gosh.
Man, if he's the heir apparent to Travis Kelce, that'd be a lot of fun. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that could get scary quick.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going to the 111. Who are you going to put in here?
So at the 111, I'm looking back at Indiana, and I'm looking at Elijah Sarratt.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Just in terms of him as a receiver, he's just very versatile and he's been able to produce for Indiana at a super high level. He's really great at these shorter routes, the slant routes. He's somebody that they look to on first for first downs and touchdowns a lot. And he's somebody that makes those happen a lot. So that is a statistic that does translate over pretty well at the NFL level in terms of just reliability as a pass catcher. And even still, his role with this offense has changed over time too. He used to be a deep threat for this team. Now he's working as sort of that short route possession guy for the team, and he's still producing at a high level. So it just shows he does have that versatility. As a red zone threat, he's one of the best ones out there. He's still tied for first in touchdowns, even though he's missed a few games. And he's an older prospect at 22 years old, but at the same time, I feel like as something we've seen at the NFL level is that they are valuing age and reps a little bit more too as time goes along. And if you are able to take that age and dominate with it, that's just another thing they would take into account. But when it comes to Elijah Sarratt as a prospect himself, he has shown to me at least that he can win at every level and he can do it at a high level.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've pumped him further and further up my board. I'm a little bit jealous that you got to take him,
Yeah.
but I'm happy that we're on the same page here. He's actually my wide receiver 4. I pegged him as kind of like my analytical darling early on in the process, as I saw just like based on the statistics, he was going to rank really highly for me amongst the wide receiver group. And I was able to update my wide receiver model. Campus to Canton was having some issues with their data on their site, and we got that figured out. And so I was able to like fully input everything. He graded out phenomenally, just without any film, which I think is also really impressive. He graded out as the wide receiver 4 in this class, right behind the likes of Tate, Tyson, and Lemon. And so, yeah, I'm really, really excited about him. I'm excited to watch him in this upcoming Big Ten title game as well, now that he's back and healthy. And yeah, I think he would be a steal at the back end of first rounds.
Absolutely. And who we have rounding out our first?
Yeah, rounding out the first round with the 112. I think I'm going to go back to the running back and I'm going to bring up Jonah Coleman. He's the guy that I was kind of alluding to as to who I've been trying to decide between as the RB2 with him and Justice Haynes. Not nearly the same play style and type of player as Justice Haynes. He's not nearly as explosive. He's way bigger, just in terms of weight. I think he's like 5'9", almost 230. Bowling ball type player, breaks a lot of tackles, way more elusive than you would expect for a guy of that size. He's actually got a lot of wiggle to him. He's been a relatively efficient runner on high volume, and so that's been very impressive. The production has been tremendous, tons of touchdowns. They do rely on him in the red zone over there at Washington, and far from a zero in the receiving game. I don't think he's necessarily like dynamic or difference making. A lot of the passes that he's catching are kind of screens and swing passes, but he's adept at catching the football. It's not an issue for him by any means. And in terms of just college production, like being up over 20, 30 receptions is a fairly significant number, and he's right in that range. And so that's been really impressive to see. So to be able to get a running back with that kind of profile at the very end of the first round, I think would be a pretty good spot.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I would even go as far to say he's great as a pass catcher, to be honest with you. And again, that's something that you wouldn't really expect to see out of someone with, the build that he has at the running back position. But he's one of those guys who he can make those quick cuts and he can also break off those huge runs as well. So, like you said, I think someone with this kind of profile this late in the first, if I could get someone like this, I'd be pretty ecstatic about it.
100%. All right, so that was our first round. Where do you want to take us here to start the second?
So to start the second round, I'm gonna go with someone who I also think is gonna be an early day 2 guy. I'm going with Denzel Boston,
Okay.
just because I love the physical profile. I love the way that he plays the game of football, and I think that one thing people kinda knock him is that, he's not the most athletic, even though, he's a big guy, but I think he is pretty underrated, athletically. I think he's pretty fast in terms of, if he builds up speed, he gets downhill pretty quick. But in terms of how I view him as a player, I think he boxes out defenders really well. He makes contested catches extremely well. He's a strong physical receiver at this catch point, and he's seen as someone who could potentially be a first round talent. Me personally, I think he'll be an early day 2 guy, but that I don't think that knocks him at all in his profile because I think that if he gets the right landing spot, He's someone that, one, has X potential at any team just being 6'4", 209 pounds just off of size alone, and with his play style, he does profile as a traditional X. So, I think that if he landed with the right team and got the right opportunity, I think he's one of those guys who could well outperform this draft position.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'm gonna have a tough time with him because before I dove into the data and I was just looking at film, I was really impressed as well. I thought that he showed the ability to succeed at all levels of the field. You mentioned people kind of knock him, or at least aren't giving him enough credit for the athleticism that he does have at his size. They ask him to return punts, and they get him involved in the screen game. For a guy that big to be doing that, I think that tells you a lot about his ability with the ball in his hands. But then when I got into the analytics and put him into my wide receiver model, it didn't come out so great. His yak numbers are pretty terrible. His yards per route run is relatively unimpressive. His contested catch rate is kind of concerningly high. And so it's kind of a balancing act where, like, which side of it do I want to buy into? I think that this is certainly a fair spot to have him. And especially if he finds himself in the back half of the first round of like actual NFL drafts, he more than deserves to be here. But just kind of, telling both sides of the story. I'm a little bit concerned with Boston, but fully understand why you'd be willing to take him here.
Absolutely.
All right. So with the 202, I think I'm going to take the second Notre Dame running back,
There he
Jadarian
goes.
Price. He's been really impressive, even sharing the backfield with Jeremiyah Love. Obviously, when you have the 101 in your backfield, it's going to be hard to separate yourself. And so I think, that might make him a little bit of a value when we get to draft season. But he's been incredibly efficient, actually more efficient than Jeremiyah Love, or at least was like 3 weeks ago. That may have changed. Jeremiyah Love has been ripping off some crazy games this past month or so. But he's been a very efficient runner. I think he's got a nasty stiff arm that he uses. That's kind of like his not secret weapon, but like his most utilized.
Card. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's his
exactly.
calling card for sure.
And so he's able to keep defenders at bay, keep them off of his body, create space. And I think that leads to a lot of these, even if he is getting tackled, like he's falling forward every single time. He's not huge. He's close to kind of that prototypical size. I think he's like 205, 210-ish. And, even if he puts on a little bit of weight, I think that will be perfectly fine. The only thing that I'm a little bit worried about, as I am with a lot of these guys, is whether he's actually going to declare or if he's going to want to go back to school and be kind of the featured back at Notre Dame. But I think he's incredibly talented, and I'd be happy to have him in the early second.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think he's somebody who, if he had gone to any other school, he could probably be the number one running back there. He's very underrated, but like you said, it's just because he's behind Jeremiyah Love. But I think if he was the number one at any other school, we may be having a different conversation right now. But he's one of those guys that, like you said, he's just very good at manipulating the space around him, very good at keeping people at bay with his, that stiff arm, that stiffy. But I think he's one of those guys that if he was an starting running back at the next level, he could make a splash. I've actually seen a couple different mocks, and I've seen a couple different videos as well. People saying that he could go to the Texans as a landing spot, which I think would be a pretty good spot for him. I think it'd be pretty fun. But it's just one of those guys that if you inject him into an offense, he is talented enough to make a difference.
Yeah, I completely agree. Something I forgot to mention, just in terms of the statistics to kind of back up what we saw on tape, he and Justice Haynes are among the league leaders in the country right now in terms of ripping off big gains, like 10+ yard chunk gains. I think he's at a 25% chunk rate this year, so that's a really impressive spot to be. And again, when we're talking about these slightly less than elite tier running backs, you want the guys that can rip off big gains and give you week winning type plays on limited volume.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Where are we going to go at the 203?
At the 203, we're going to go back to USC, actually. I'm looking at Jacoby Lane.
Okay.
Somebody whose film has actually been impressing me quite a bit lately, especially with the contested catches. He's got 11 contested catches so far this season. He's 10th in the class. So in terms of just being a human highlight reel, he's been really fun to watch. He's a really fun profile to watch. But just in terms of the actual physical profile, he's 6'4", 200 pounds, and he's just a really big mismatch for smaller defenders. He's really good at boxing out smaller defenders as well with those contested catches. I think he's an underrated athlete who can burn people deep as well. And when it comes to just that big playability and being capable of coming down with the ball if it's thrown up to you, I think if that can translate at the next level, he could just be one of those big play guys as well. So I like Jacoby Lane. I think if you were to get him at this spot right here, I think he'd be a good value here in the second.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more about the ball skills and like the jump ball potential. That's certainly his calling card. He might be the best in the country at that.
Yeah.
That's also kind of what concerns me about him. To this point, so far this season, 32% of his targets or of his receptions
Have
are
been
contested.
contested. Yeah.
And so he's winning on them, right? Like he's converting those contested catches at a very high rate, which is great to see. But the fact that he's putting himself in that situation over and over and over again and not creating space, not making himself an easy target for his quarterback, that's where I start to get a little bit nervous. But once we're at this point in the second round, I do think he has the upside. He has some pedigree as well. He was a relatively high recruit. And he's doing it at a good school alongside Makai Lemon, producing at a relatively high level, even with Makai Lemon, who's producing as one of the top wide receivers in the entire country. So there's plenty of positives for him as well. So I like that.
Also, let's ask Matthew Golden about separation out here. You know what I'm saying?
Sometimes it's not all it's cracked up to be.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So this is going to round out our early second with the next pick. I think I'm going to go with a guy that we haven't been the most positive about, but I'm going to bring up Nick Singleton.
Okay.
Hasn't had the best season necessarily. I think that if he had declared after last year, he would have been highly sought after. He would have been probably an early day two guy. And I think he's hurt his draft stock a little bit by coming back. I don't know that the Penn State system was necessarily designed with him in mind, but he has shown flashes over these past couple of weeks of what he is capable of, how dynamic he is, how explosive he is. You know, that's kind of the thing that we've been emphasizing with these guys that aren't on the level of Jeremiyah Love. I've said it a bunch of times already. You want the guys that can rip off big plays, and Nick Singleton is certainly that. Like, if there's one thing that you can count on him to do, maybe not with regularity, but you can't count on that from anybody necessarily. But he's got the speed. He's got the burst to definitely hit the second level and take off and hit those home runs. And he's also very, very competent in the passing game. And so I think he's pretty well-rounded. I do think he is situation dependent. He probably needs a pretty good offensive line around him and good team situation in order to succeed. But you can say that about a lot of running backs. And so I think the upside is worth taking a shot on him here.
Absolutely. I'd agree with that. I think that he's somebody we talked about on the channel before and we've referred to him as someone who can thrive in good situations, but when in bad situations, he's not really the best. But again, at this point, we're looking in the second round of drafts at this point, and we're looking for guys that, we're hoping for good situations for all of these guys. We're not hoping for bad situations for anyone.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if he were to land in one of those good situations and we were to see some of that similar production we did see from last year, yeah, absolutely. He'd be a steal at this point in drafts.
100%. Yeah, he was a guy that was talked about, in the conversation with Travion Henderson as like, he was a sophomore at the time, but was in the conversation of that like RB1, RB2 territory. He's dropped off considerably, but he could potentially reach back up to those heights.
Absolutely.
But that'll do it for the early seconds. We're on to the mid seconds. Who's going to be your 205?
I'm going to do it. I'm going to fall on the grenade. I'm going to take Lenoris Sellers here because this is a super flex draft.
Yeah.
I'm say fall on the grade. I'm saying that, in jest because it has been a bit of a rough season for Lenoris Sellers, but I do still believe in at least the talent of Lenoris Sellers. And honestly, me personally, I'm hoping that he does not declare this year. I hope he stays, goes to a better school, and he's able to actually put together a season like I feel like he can. Because when it comes to the physicality of this guy, first off, he's 6'3", 240. He's an absolute unit. He leads the Power 4 in broken tackles amongst quarterbacks, of course. And he's got 5 rushing touchdowns on the season so far. And again, this is in a year where he's going through a slump. So that's still a considerable amount of rushing touchdowns for his quarterback who's going through a rushing slump. But with that being said, I think if he were able to pull it all together, get to another team that he got that opportunity, or even if he got drafted right now and he was a project quarterback that a team was working on, I think that he has all the physical tools that he needs to thrive. He just needs to be put into the right situation.
Yeah, I would agree with that. His offensive line certainly wasn't doing him any favors this year. I think you could also argue that he put himself in a lot of bad spots.
Yes.
Um, People are going to want to make the comparison to Anthony Richardson just because of that physical size and his athletic ability. I think that he's had more of a body of work as a passer. Not that it's been fantastic or consistent, but I think it's certainly better than what we had seen from Richardson as a prospect. And so there is a little bit of a baseline there. And I agree with you. I would like to see him go back to school and hopefully kind of improve upon that, get some more reps under his belt before he declares for the draft. But the upside is obviously there with somebody that has that rushing ability. We just hope that he can kind of clean up the fundamental aspects of his game.
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is going to be what, the 206?
Yes.
I think sounds right.
206.
I'm going to take Chris Bell out of Louisville. I've said this every video that we've talked about him, but I think it's really funny. And I'll expand upon it a little bit too, because I've thought about it some more as we've kind of gone along. But Dane Brugler made this comparison, sort of saying that he's got a wide range of outcomes, anywhere from the likes of AJ Brown to Traylon Burks, right? Like you couldn't get any more vastly different.
Hey, Traylon Burks was cooking last week.
Hey, you're not wrong. He's got tremendous size at 6'2". I think he's just over 220. I think he's got really good athletic ability. He's certainly got the speed. I think he's an incredible accelerator for his size. I'm not going to put him in the AJ Brown tier of athleticism, and certainly not in terms of polish. Obviously, AJ Brown has become a more polished and refined receiver as he's been in the NFL. But even coming out of Ole Miss back in 2019, I think that he was probably a more refined prospect than what we're seeing from Chris Bell. But physically, and in small pockets of the route tree, I think he's been really, really impressive. Going deep, he's great at boxing out defenders and creating leverage for himself. In the short and intermediate game, I think he's great when it comes to drags and slants, getting him going horizontally. Once he gets the ball in his hands, he turns into a running back in the open field. And so I think that those things are going to be pretty enticing to an NFL team. I just don't know that he's on the level yet where he can consistently separate. And I'm worried that he might not get there. He might not, develop that polish that you need to see for him to be a consistent producer at the next level. But in the mid-second, I'm willing to take that upside shot.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think, like you said, I agree with everything you said. I think he's a burner. I think he's one of those guys who is strong at the catch point, able to, body smaller receivers. Because, like you said, he's built like a running back. Because 220 is crazy, but you wouldn't expect him to move the way that he does at 220. And when it comes to his route tree, that was something that we really wanted to see expand this year. And like you said, it expanded quite a bit. He used to be more of a gadgety type guy, but now he's proven that he can beat guys at that intermediate level. He can beat guys deep as well. And between the big play ability and the speed, I think he is, he's a very intriguing prospect for sure. I think it's going to come down with, as for a lot of these guys, it's going to come down to where he ends up landing at. But he is one of those guys who could, make that difference with, the tools that he has.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like it. All right. 207 is your pick to make.
The 207, I'm going back to the tight ends. I'm going with Michael Trigg here.
Yes, dude. Yes.
Michael Trigg to me is like a more successful Logan Thomas, which like Logan Thomas was pretty good, all things considered, but he reminds me of it. Also a former quarterback as well. So he just kind of has that football IQ and vision as well. And they move him all around the field because of it. And they use him in the slot. They use him out wide as a tight end. His hands are just exceptional. One-handed grabs all over the place. Excels at the catch point. After the catch, he's still able to make moves and get down the field as well.
Yeah, dude.
He's just honestly all around. He could be one of those guys that he's not the best blocker in the world. I'll give you that. but it's something that could develop over time. He's got the right size and frame for it. So I'm not going to say he's a zero as a blocker, but as a receiver, he's just about everything you would really want in a tight end prospect.
Yeah, I'm really happy you brought him up. He was going to be close. I think he was one pick after who I was going to pick next, but I hadn't really he hadn't come across my plate yet, right? Until a little bit later on in the process. I just recently kind of picked him up. He was on my radar. His tape is so much fun to watch, dude.
Yes.
I think he has 17 missed tackles forced so far this season. Brock Bowers' best season of missed tackles was 18. I think Tyler Warren's was 19. So he's like in that range. Like he is a menace with the ball in his hands. And for him to have the fluidity and athleticism and route running ability that he has at his size, what is he
Yeah.
like 6'4", 235, 240-ish,
Yeah. He's a
somewhere in
big
there?
boy. He's a big boy.
He looks like really, really smooth as an athlete. He's fluid coming in and out of his breaks. Like he looks like a big receiver, but he's big enough to hopefully eventually contribute as a blocker and as an inline tight end and be able to stay on the field. You mentioned that his blocking isn't really up to par as of yet. Hopefully
Yeah.
he can improve upon that. But man, the ceiling on this guy is crazy. Obviously, we've kind of seen this trap before where you have these wide receiver-esque tight ends that can't block, and so they just never are on the field. Hopefully he doesn't fall into that category. But again, we're in the mid-second. We're shooting for upside. I absolutely love this pick.
Absolutely.
All right. I'm going to shout out you, Will. This is another guy that wasn't really on my radar until you brought him up in our wide receiver video. If I can, there he is. The other Indiana receiver alongside Elijah Sarratt, Omar Cooper Jr. Dude, he's awesome. I really like his tape. He's so much fun to watch. I was watching a video just to kind of get some community perspective on some of these prospects. And Brett Whitefield from Fantasy Points was talking about him and compared him to Luther Burden. I don't think he's, to that level of a prospect, just in terms of body of work over his career. But on tape, I think they have a lot of similarities. I think he's a really strong catcher of the football. I think that he's dynamic with the ball in his hands, the same way that Luther Burden is. And I think he's shown at different points in his career, he's kind of been used in different roles. We've seen him with the gadgety usage around the line of scrimmage. We've seen him kind of be like the possession guy. And recently, with Elijah Sarratt having the injury issues, we've seen him deployed down the field as well. He had that incredible catch to win the game against Penn State a few weeks ago. I've been really, really impressed with Omar Cooper Jr. I think that getting him at the 208 in the middle of the second round could be an absolute steal. The body of work to this point in his career, like he didn't have a great freshman and sophomore year production wise. He's really come on this year. But if we can get past that and just look at what he's capable of, I think he's a really, really impressive prospect.
Yeah, I think he's one of those guys who he's pretty raw for the most part, but he's not one of those guys that's so raw that you don't see the potential, because you can see the potential as a route runner. Like you said, you can see the potential as a deep threat. They kind of been moving this guy all around the field throughout the season, and he's kind of rose up to the challenge at every point. And that's kind of what you want to see
100%.
out of guys at that level. And he's been awesome this year. So I'm glad I could swing you over a little bit.
Dude, I appreciate you putting him on the radar. He's been a fun watch.
Of course.
So that'll do it for the mid-second. Let's move on to these last four with the late second. Who's going to be your, 209?
So 209, I'm looking at running backs, and I'm looking at Emmett Johnson out of Nebraska. He's been interesting so far this year for me. Obviously, it's been a huge workload, and so far in the second half of the season, things have started to look a lot better than the first half have. Now, as a runner, he's very physical, likes to run through contact. He fights for extra yards, really hard-nosed runner, but also he's underrated as a pass catcher, I'd say, too. And I think he's shown, flashes of being a good pass catcher, despite the limited opportunities he's had. So I think he's one of those guys who he's got the mileage, he's shown the reliability. He's got what I consider to be a high floor for a guy who's probably going to end up being a mid-round running back in the draft. But I think that if he were to get that opportunity or be one of those guys who gets slotted in to be the running back 2 for a team, he could be productive at the NFL level.
Yeah, I completely agree. He's just really well-rounded, as you alluded to. I don't have a ton to add. He's another guy that I've kind of added to my board late in the process, so I haven't had enough time to really deep dive into his profile. I did have him kind of in this borderline area right at the end of the second round as well. So I agree with him being drafted here. I also want to stay at the running back position. We're going to kind of switch styles, not nearly the same runner that Emmett Johnson is. And first team all name, we're going Hollywood Smothers.
Yes.
He's also so much fun to watch on tape. Undersized, right? So there is some risk there just in terms of where he ends up, whether the team is going to want to give him volume. Even at NC State, he hasn't been given a ton of volume. He's been splitting the workload with other running backs. But when he does get the ball in his hands, he's electric, incredibly efficient. These stats I pulled from a few weeks ago. They're not exactly up to date, but he was at 6.5 yards per carry for his career and 6.9 on the season. He had 4.33 yards after contact per attempt and over a 20% chunk rate. So he was ripping off big plays at a pretty impressive rate. And also as a receiver, you would hope that somebody of this size would be capable as a receiver, but he absolutely is, with a yards per route run of 2.25 at the running back position. That's crazy. That's like outproducing a lot of the wide receivers in this class. He already had 28 receptions. Again, this was as of like 3 or 4 weeks ago now. So I think he's incredibly dynamic. I think that he's a big play waiting to happen. There's just the risk that, he's 195 pounds. Like he might go somewhere that's not going to be willing to put the ball in his hands enough. And so that's just kind of the risk that you run taking him. But again, at the end of the second, you want guys that can be explosive and put big plays on the board. So that's what I'm going to rely on here.
No, I 100% agree. I think when it comes to upside and just, all of that, like you said, when it comes to receiving and just the upside that comes along with that, we've seen what receiving can do for running backs in fantasy and how much it can elevate them in terms of them just being that, prospect or just being a dynasty or fantasy asset. And him being as good of a receiver as he is at the running back position, that's a huge edge right there.
100%. Couldn't agree
And also,
more.
and the name is just incredible.
So good. All right. Your last pick at the 211. Who's it going to be?
At the 211, I'm going to go with Wayman Jordan.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah, it's just somebody who, when I've been watching his film, he's been impressive to me. I feel like he's been very efficient with his touches. I feel like anytime I watch him, he consistently does gain positive yardage. It's not too often I see him get the ball and lose yards, which is a very great, very great trait to have as a running back.
Absolutely.
I think he has great vision when it comes to finding holes, making quick cuts, and getting to them. Another thing that helps generate that positive yardage every time. I think he's underrated as a pass catcher as well. He shows potential, and I think he's one of those guys who just shows value at the next level and could be one of those rotational guys who just have some value in fantasy, to be honest with you. At this point in the draft, end of the second round, I think he's someone that if he were to go to a team and he isn't the starting running back, if he were to get slotted in, he would be able to be a good fantasy asset for you.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. He's also in the category of guy that might return to school, just because he's kind of an interesting case where this is his first year in the FBS. His freshman and sophomore year in college, he played at JUCO. And so this was his first year, and on the biggest stage in one of the best divisions in all of college football, he's put up really impressive production. He's got some special contact balance. That was something that really impressed me with him. These numbers are a little outdated from when we did our running back video, but at the time, he had a class leading 5.15 yards after contact per attempt. That was a top 5 number among qualifying power 4 backs. He's also really patient. I think I comped him, not his entire profile, obviously, but just in this regard to Le'Veon Bell, where he's kind of like slithering and waiting out for that hole in the backfield. So that was pretty fun to watch on tape as well. He's not Le'Veon Bell. Please don't get it twisted for anybody out there. Don't posterize me with that in the comments, but I do really like his tape. I've been impressed with his analytical profile as well. And I think he's somebody that jumps out in this kind of non-elite tier of running backs for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, let's round this thing out. The last pick in the second round. Again, this is half point tight end premium. So I'm going to finish it with a tight end. I'm going to go with Eli Stowers out of Vandy. He's been a big producer so far this year out there with what is it? Diego Pavia, potential Heisman runner up. We'll see. We'll see where he ends up. But Stowers is really impressive. He's also just barely undersized, kind of like we talked about with Trigg, where I think he's 6'3", like 235. Another 5 or 10 pounds, and he'd be right in that sweet spot for the kind of prototypical size at tight end. But he's been a great producer. He's also very fluid as a route runner. I do think he is capable as a blocker. Just again, needs to put on a little bit of size. I don't think that he's elite at any one aspect of the game, but I think he's pretty well rounded. He's very strong at the catch point. He's a very consistent kind of possession guy and security blanket for his quarterback. And so I think, again, in a tight end premium, even half point tight end premium, I think that he's probably worth a shout here at the end of the second.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think he's someone, like you said, he's proven that, he can get it done. He's also got a good frame to him as well, 6'4", 235. So he's a bigger guy as well. But yeah, at this point, you're really taking shots on guys that, you think you can produce at the next level. And I think he can.
Yeah. So that'll do it. That's going to be our first and second rounds of our mock draft. We'll be doing plenty more of these as we go throughout draft season. So if you're interested, would highly suggest that you stick around, subscribe to the channel, stuff of that nature. But before we fully round it out, is there anybody you want to add to honorable mentions? Anybody you want to talk about before we finish this thing?
Just some other names to throw around. Antonio Williams, another good name to throw around. I liked his tape. I thought he was very versatile. I think he's versatile in his play, but I think he's a slot receiver for the most part, but very reliable in terms of how he plays and after the catch, good at gaining yards as well. So wouldn't be surprised to see his name rise up in the mix a little bit more as well. And Mike Washington Jr., another name I think could possibly be in the mix as well. Just explosive playmaker, great after the catch, versatile in terms of like screens, deep routes, sweeps, stuff of that nature, just all over the field. Just someone I could see rising up through draft boards, through the combine as well too.
Yeah, apologies, I didn't have him in the pictured list, but Mike Washington, running back out of, what is it, Washington State?
Yes.
Yeah, I think.
Let me
We'll
make
check
sure.
that for you. But I agree.
Yeah.
He's another guy that's probably worth a shout. In the same vein, other running backs, Katron Allen, Darius Taylor, both kind of bigger bruising backs. Darius Taylor actually one of the better receiving backs as well in the country. So I think they're worth a shout. Jeremy Bernard, I think, is going to get a lot of hype from some people in the draft community. I'm not quite as high on him, but I think he's really well-rounded. Did you have a confirmation on Mike Washington?
Arkansas. Yeah.
Apologies. Okay, Arkansas. But yeah, I think that'll probably round it out. I hope you guys enjoyed as always. If you did, and if you learned something, please do leave a like on the video. We very much appreciate it. Hit that sub button, hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date with all of our latest releases, and be part of the discussion too. Let us know what you think of this mock draft. If there's anybody you would have added, anybody that you would have left out, let us know down in the comments below. We would really appreciate it. And check out the link in the description for our Discord if you want to talk to us individually and on a more personal level. We're always in there chopping it up with our community. But yeah, I think that'll probably do it for us. As always, if you made it this far into the video, we love you and we appreciate you. And we will catch you in the next one. Peace.
Peace.